Up next on Inside Vintage Racing, the 2024 Can-Am Mini Challenge. Welcome to Inside Vintage Racing. I'm Brian Bielanski. Episode number 8, maybe? We're going to go with 8. I think it's 8. Could be 9. Could be 7. I'm going to go with 8. Tonight, I'm excited about this show, talking about some cars I really, really like. That's been the fun part about starting Inside Vintage Racing. I get to kind of walk down memory lane every single week, and we're going to do it again here. My guest tonight is John Wittenauer. John, how you doing, my friend?
Doing good, Brian.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here with me tonight. And I'm going to talk about some fun stuff. John and I know each other from a different series, from Champ Car. And he is involved there. We've had him on our Inside Champ Car podcast. I have to say our because I got Bill with me. But welcome to the show.
Can't forget Bill.
Cannot forget Bill, Mr. Opal. Mr. Opal. Let's start with the question. You've answered this question on our other podcast, but since this is the first time you've been on Inside Vintage Racing, how did you get mixed up with this crazy sport that we love?
Well, back in about 2008, I bought an old Mini. And we drove it for a few years, enjoyed it. When my son went off to college, I restored that car. And he was at Kettering University. And one day he called me and said, "Hey, Dad, why don't you come over this weekend? We got an autocross." So I took my 77 Mini over there and we did an autocross. And then, a month or two later, he calls me up and say, "Hey, Dad, there's this track day group called Three Balls Racing that's going to this place called Gingerman. Why don't you come on over and, bring your Mini?" And so I went and did that. And it's like, okay, this is pretty fun. And, I'm out there in a car that only costs a bit more than a new Mini now that I've restored it. And I think this is kind of dumb. Maybe I should look around for a race Mini. A real one, a race car. And about that time, I heard about this race coming up at Mid-Ohio in 2014 called the Can-Am Mini Challenge.
Nice.
So in October 2012, I bought what was known as the Coke machine from Roger Coke in Columbus, Ohio. And it was a 1964 Morris Cooper S that had been a race car its whole life, and proceeded to restore that car, get it back up to spec safety-wise. And in 2013, did my driver's school with VSCDA, did 3 races, kept my nose clean so I could get my full-time competition license, so that in 2014, I could be at Mid-Ohio with SVRA for the second Can-Am Mini Challenge race.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it was a big turnout for that one, too.
So no upbringing as a kid, nothing, no racetrack time, just your kid got you into it.
Yeah. And now he's got his vintage Mini. My wife has a 1968 Unipower GT, which is a mini-powered tube frame car. Pretty cool, very rare.
Nice.
And so we do the Champ Car Endurance Series, 3 or 4 races a year, and we do vintage 3 or 4 races a year.
So the car that you race in the Champ Car Series, though, is not a vintage era Mini, correct?
No, that's a 2009 base model BMW Mini.
Okay. I won't ask you which you like more, although I'm going to guess it's probably the vintage ones, right?
Well, I'll tell you, 2 hours in the 2009 Mini with power steering, power brakes, and a chill-out system is easier on you than 25 minutes
Yeah.
in the 1964 Mini Cooper with none of that. But they're both.
Yeah, I mean the new Mini with all of that stuff, that's got to be like driving a yacht compared to getting into one of those classic cars.
Yeah, and they both hit about the same top speed. You know,
Right.
you'll hit like 110 at the end of the straightaway. And I'll tell you, in the 1964, that's a lot more exciting than in the 2009.
So the 1964 car, is that set up to a production spec, a GT spec? What is that most akin to that we would recognize?
So my car last raced in 1981 in GT4.
Okay.
So it started off as C sedan,
Right.
and my particular car, Roger Koch, had that as the pole sitter at the runoffs in 71 and 72.
Okay. In C
And
sedan.
he won 4 Central Division championships in SCCA C sedan with that car.
Got it.
When the factory Datsuns came out in the mid 70s, he was no longer, the top dog. And that's when he converted it from C sedan to the GT4.
Got it.
So today it would be, GT Light.
Got it. How much have you had to work that car? How close is it to what it was in 71, 72?
It's almost identical to how it was then, except for the safety cage and the fire bottle.
Got it.
Uh,
And hopefully the belts.
He had split Webers on it.
Okay.
I still had that same pair of split Webers on it. Just kept it as much as I could, as close as to what he had it.
So it's not just split Webers, it's the split Webers that were on the car in 71.
Yes.
Wow, that is so cool. How often do you rebuild those?
They've only been fully rebuilt twice now.
Okay. And I mean, the hardest part with split Webers is getting them to work together, right?
Yeah, and things shake a lot.
Yes, they do.
So keeping things attached.
Right. Because if that's raced at the runoffs in GT4, that's got to be a pretty stiff suspension on that.
Yes. Yeah. It's got front and rear, anti-roll bars, sway bars, and they're like 5/8 and 3/4 inch steel bars.
Yeah.
So it is stiff.
Yeah. What class does it run in now in vintage racing?
So it runs with the Group 2 cars.
Okay.
And so like Group 2, this race we've got coming up here next weekend, you've got F production, E production, and C sedan are your typical cars. So C sedan are your minis, E production are MGBs, Triumph TR3s, a 914 4-cylinder.
Got it.
And then F production are the Sprites and the Midgets, the Datsun 1600s, the Fiat Spiders, those kinds of cars.
Sure. Is this the Mini Can-Am Challenge? Is this a standalone weekend, or is this an event that's folded into a more broad vintage race weekend?
Yeah, it's the more broad vintage race weekend. That's been, the way we do these over the years has been to work with a host club to let us run with them, have our own feature race, on Sunday. And like I said, we did Mid-Ohio in 2014 with SVRA, Sonoma Sears Point in 2017 with CSRG. A race that I did not attend was 2019 at Portland International with Sovereign. 2018 was a great time at Watkins Glen. We had a real good turnout for that one. SVRA again was working with us. And our last one before this was at 2022 at Road Atlanta with the Historic Sports Car Racing, HSR.
Right.
But we've had a whole bunch of different groups host us. And this time we're with cvar, which is the Corinthian Vintage Auto Racing Club, which does events, mostly Texas, Oklahoma area.
Sure. So the Can-Am Mini Challenge, is this, when I saw Can-Am, I thought there'd be some Can-Am cars, but the more I'm looking at this, it's a Canadian-American Mini Cooper Challenge.
It's a Canadian-American.
Got it. Okay.
And it's meant for really, North America. We have had folks come over from the UK and the Netherlands and stuff to drive at some events in the past. But we've got several folks coming down from Canada for this event. One of the top mini racers in North America, Andy Nelson with Toy Box Racing. Him and his wife Rachel are coming down and bringing a couple cars. So in addition to the car Andy's going to drive, Doug Peterson will be driving the Fortec Mini, which is a multiple-time champion in GT5 with SCCA.
Cool.
And Doug Peterson's going to drive that car, and he was the GT5 national champion in that car in 1989, 2003, and 2004.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a wide range of cars at this event. It's going to be good.
That's very cool. So at a typical vintage race weekend, how many minis show up?
One or two.
Okay. And are they usually on the Wittenauer trailer?
Well, yeah, between me and my son, but, scattered throughout the country, most vintage groups, you've got, a few minis that show up.
Sure.
Yeah, there's a Wolseley that shows up pretty regularly for VSCDA events. But, at this event, we're going to have, I think, 14 of us.
That was going to be my next question. How many are showing up for the Can-Am Mini Cooper Challenge? 14?
Yeah, we've got 14, and we're going to be, mixing up with the Group 2 cars on Saturday. We'll run qualifying and the sprint races on Saturday with Group 2. So we will have 32, 33 cars out there. And yeah, I know their regular Group 2 folks are looking forward to run with the minis. And, us minis are used to mixing it up with the Sprites and the Midgets and the Triumphs and stuff. But that should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You're also going to a little slice of American racetrack love, Hallett Motor Speedway. Hallett Motor Racing Circuit. I always have to correct myself on that. Have you been to Hallett before?
Yeah, actually, drove out last October and did a scouting mission. Didn't race.
Okay.
But met Scott and Jennifer Stevens that own the track and run it, and you couldn't ask for nicer people.
Oh, so much so. Yep.
And so we went out for cvar's October event last year. So it's the same crowd and the same folks that we knew we would be with this year. Kind of meet and greet and see how they do things and make sure that we can all work together.
How early did you get to the racetrack?
Oh, are you talking about 7 a.m.?
I am talking about 7 a.m. Were you there for 7 a.m.?
I was there for 7 a.m. on one of the days, and this coming weekend we're going to stay at the track in an RV, so we will be there every day for 7 a.m.
So for those who've not had the joy of being at Hallett and going to a race there at 7 a.m. every race day, they play the chicken dance.
And this is not your, chicken dance from Italian weddings. This is Ray Stevens.
Yes.
And it's like in the mood, but chickens clucking.
Exactly. And the first time I heard it, so I was warned kind of warned about it when I went the first time, and they didn't tell me exactly what it was, but they said you've got to be there before 7 a.m. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm setting up broadcast. I'll be there before 7 a.m. And the first time I heard it, first of all, it scared the living dickens out of me because I wasn't expecting it. And then I was like, this is the most bizarrely, absurdly cool thing I've ever seen before. And then they went ahead and did it again on Sunday, and I'm like, well, this must be a thing. And apparently it's a thing, and it's kind of really cool. So yeah,
it's been going on for years.
And the Stevens family who runs place is they're just racers through and through, and have spent a ton of time and money, and have really. And a nice part about it is it still has that club track feel to it. It has a great. It's hard to say how. It's a great level of non-refinement. It doesn't have all of the fancy stuff that you have if you go to Road America or you go to Road Atlanta, but it is absolutely up to date. The track is beautiful. The facilities are everything you need is there. But if you're from the Midwest, think Black Hawk Farms. Very much along that lines there. That was one of the tracks I went to growing up, and or a Roebling Road kind of situation. It is a quintessential Mid-American club racing track, and I absolutely just love it.
Yeah, I asked Jennifer about, well, what noise restrictions do you have at this track? And I'm expecting, 96 decibels at 50 feet, something like that. She says, well, we try to encourage people to kind of quiet down by 10 p.m. out of respect for other people. It's like, okay.
Yep.
This is good.
It's really out in the middle of nowhere. It's about 20 miles west of Tulsa. Whatever you do, though, if you're coming from the west, if you're coming from the east, don't miss your exit. Because it's 19 miles to the next exit to turn around and drive back. Don't ask me how I know.
Yeah, that's if you're on the little toll road.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I missed the exit. I was beating along to the music, and I was like, oh, crap. And then I finally realized I had to go a long ways to get to it. So Hallett is got a ton of elevation change, really twisty, doesn't have a hugely long straight on it. When you're all minis, it doesn't really matter. But when you're up with the rest of the Group 2 cars, is there an advantage or a disadvantage to being a mini?
I think the Group 2, we're going to be pretty evenly matched there. It's a good balance. Mm-hmm. And the minis are going to be up against Group 2 cars that run there twice a year for the last 20 years.
Right.
So they know the track a lot better than we do. Now, I did insist on Friday, the last event of the day on Friday practice day is going to be a 30-minute, they're calling it a gas tank challenge. I call it another 30 minutes to learn the track under race conditions.
Okay.
And that's going to be all the 2-liter and under cars, sort of like a closed wheel 2-liter and under.
Okay.
So that won't just be Group 2. That'll be all of them.
Okay.
I tried to get the cvar folks to let us race with the Mustangs and stuff. They've got a half a dozen Mustangs signed up for this event.
Right.
But they figured that might be pushing it a little bit too much.
What do you enjoy about driving those minis? What's the challenge in it?
A lot of it, the car is very visceral. I mean, it's you feel everything in the road. You've got that feedback. There's nothing power. There's it's just it's you're kind of got to be like kind of one with the car and the track. And like my car, I find the harder I push it, the better it does. It's like you push it harder and the tires actually heat up and start gripping more. And it's just it's very different than getting out there in a smooth quiet running car.
And I, compared to the B spec Mini or the modern day Mini, it feels like it's a full on race car. It's still a production based car.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, when I got my car, it still had the full paisley print door panels in it and everything else. I couldn't believe he was running it that way. I did leave the ashtray in it. I decided that's got to stay, that little ashtray in the front of the car.
So when you're vintage racing it, do you detune it just a tiny bit so that you know it's going to stay together? Because I know those GT4 cars or GT5 cars, they were pretty wound out.
Yeah, these cars are wound up. You're. I kind of limit myself to try not to go over 7,000 RPM, except when you really need it.
Right.
Then all right, you're going 7,500 or more, and it's the when we were at Blackhawk earlier this year, my wife in her car kept saying, I'm kind of running out of gear or whatever, and I'm telling her, when you're coming down to the checkered flag, do not shift. Just go ahead and run it up to 8,000. Do not shift. And because you're going to lose time when you shift.
Yeah.
If you're neck and neck with somebody, just go. And that's pretty much what you have to do.
Right.
And some of these folks, we've got Greg Wold in this race. He was the 2022 champion. He builds cars. He's just a master at this. And I know between him and Andy Nelson out of Canada, I mean, they're going to be playing with their timing and everything else to see how hard they can push it for that feature race on Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah. It always interests me when I go to a vintage race. There's always some folks out there who are treating, other than the lack of contact that you don't get in vintage racing, they're racing their cars just as hard as possible. And I'm thinking, man, these cars they're not priceless, but you don't want to mess these cars up.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you also don't want to be that guy that, loses a gearbox and puts oil down on the track and stuff either, so you got to have some smarts there. And
sure.
Speaking
of that, how hard is it to find parts for these cars?
Not tough. Okay. For the GT cars, that's a little tougher if you screw up your fiberglass big fenders and stuff. But there's still a lot of support for minis. There's so many of them still racing in the UK and elsewhere. There's some really good companies out there making products for these.
Right.
We're going to have Jason Anderson with Janderson Heads will actually be at the track. His company has just started making heads, valve train components and stuff for minis. And, just looking forward to seeing, what he's got on the offer. Again, it's kind of a brand new supplier for us.
Yeah. It's interesting that in 2024, there's a company who's putting brand new stuff together for cars that are, well, let's see, 71. I was born in 70. They're 50-year-old cars.
This is the 65th anniversary of the Mini this year.
Wow.
So, the first ones were 1959.
Okay.
And we actually have a 1959 car entered in this race. So it's one of the small bore cars.
Okay. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we've got everything from a 1959 small bore to the Fortec Mini.
Yeah.
We've got an Austin America. We've got a Unipower GT comp car, left to factory as a competition car, one of 6,
Hmm.
ever made. So there's going to be some neat stuff there.
Is there any estimation as to how many of those 59s are still able to be on the road?
Oh, I don't know.
Can't be many, right?
No, it can't be.
Man, if I had a 59 Mini, I might think about putting it in the garage and finding a museum to put it in.
Yeah, I mean, I look at my car. Yeah, it's a '64 Morris Cooper S.
Okay.
So it's like one of 1,600 produced.
Yeah.
And I've got the headliner. I've got the original speedometer. I've got, all the interior parts, came with this car. And, geez, do I just put it back as,
Yeah.
as an original and retire it from racing? But it's too much fun.
Absolutely. So of those 1,600 that were made in 64, do you know how many of those are still around?
No, I have no idea.
I was wondering if there might have been a Mini Cooper registry kind of situation out there, because I know in some of those classic cars they go and try to see how many are around and how many they can locate and that kind of stuff.
Well, they made over 5 million minis.
Yeah.
So there's still a good number of them out there. You can buy a new shell still for a Mini. You can buy every single part for a Mini.
From whom?
There's folks in the UK that make shells. There's a guy over there that will do a fully caged shell for you and ship it to the US.
Wow. So what year would that be considered?
So it's a good platform in that respect.
Right.
That everything's available.
Yeah, I've never seen anyone get out of a Mini that was still running without a smile on their face.
Yeah.
They just look like I've never had the opportunity to drive either the original or the BMW Mini. I would love to give it a whirl once. That sounds like a ton of fun. So, how much room in those cars?
Well, my car's former owner was over 6'4".
Okay.
And the pictures of him in the car, his head's behind the B pillar.
Oh my gosh.
And kind of laying down in it. But yeah, the old Mini, I mean, the genius of the design was how roomy it was.
Right.
Because, every, you've got head, block, gearbox.
Yeah.
All stacked. Differential, front wheel drive. Yeah, there's nothing coming back.
Right.
Into the cabin. So yeah, they're pretty roomy.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the same time, it's like driving a brick. Yeah, there's no aerodynamic to it.
Really? Who would have thought? So, how many of the Can-Am Mini Challenges have there been?
So next weekend's event will be the 7th.
Okay. And have you participated in all of them?
No, I missed the first one was in 2009 at Brainerd, and I didn't make that one. And I didn't make the one at Portland International in 2019.
It's a long tow.
We had too much going on at the time to make the 4-day drive out there. But did the Mid-Ohio in 2014, the Sonoma in 2017, Watkins Glen in 2018, and Road Atlanta in 2022.
Right.
COVID, we kind of got off track with COVID there for a couple years, and had our date bounced around a good bit for that race. But getting things back on track now.
Sure. So putting one of these together, Well, let me ask you this other question. How much of an event like this is about the camaraderie, about everybody getting together once a year? You get all your buddies there, and you get to have fun Saturday night, shooting the breeze, maybe tossing back an adult beverage.
Pretty much every vintage racing weekend, that's the plan. It's getting together with people having that nice party on Saturday evening. Hopefully you're not, changing an engine in the dark, getting bit by mosquitoes. Yeah. And it's, even, it's interacting not just with the other drivers, but, every family that comes up to, and the kids want to see the car, we open the door, we put the kids in the driver's seat, just make sure the power switch is off.
Yeah.
But, it's a family-friendly event, and you want to get other people interested in it.
Cool. These things don't happen by themselves. It takes people to put it together. You've got some thank yous you want to get out of here before we head out for the night?
Yeah. This is my first event where I'm doing, kind of organizing the event. And the previous Can-Am Mini Challenges, Rachel Nelson and Mike Kearney did the organizing and such, and they turned it over to me. But I'll tell you, Rachel's been helping out a lot with this event and continues to do so. The folks at cvar, Steve Coleman, David Lee, Danny Pio, they've been, so helpful with, putting schedules together and, putting up with me and all my questions and such. And Randall Binion with cvar did the sticker design for the event and the trophy design. Much appreciate his hard work. And, we've got some great partners for this. Hoosier Tires has donated a set of vintage race tires to award the winner of the C sedan class. Mini Spares, one of the great suppliers out of the UK for all your mini parts, is providing a gift certificate. MED Engineering, that does a lot of race components out of the UK. They've provided a ton of swag. And Jason Anderson, who I mentioned with Janderson Heads, has given a gift certificate for one of our winners. So we've got a nice package that's been put together.
Very cool.
And I want to thank those folks for coming through.
All right. And anything I didn't ask? Any other information you want to get out there before we head home for the evening?
Well, we will have a car corral for minis old and new at the track. So everyone's welcome to come out. There's going to be charity laps at lunchtime. You can drive Hallett Motor Racing Circuit in your street car or your old Mini or new Mini. And the feature race for the Mini Can-Am Challenge will be the last race on Sunday before lunch.
Okay. So
it's going to be a good weekend. Going to be a warm weekend too. It looks like mid-80s.
There you go. Is registration still open if someone's got a Mini out there and hasn't registered? Now this is going to air on Monday night, so.
Yep, registration is still open, and even if you show up Thursday, the day before the event, as long as you have a valid competition license, we'll get you through tech.
Very good. John Wittenauer, the organizer of the Can-Am Mini Challenge 2024. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you.
All right, that's going to do it for another episode of Inside Vintage Racing. If you enjoyed what you saw, please subscribe to the Racing Wire, the Racing Network, and the Racing Wire Podcast Network so you won't miss any episodes. Would also be great if you leave a comment. You can do that on social media. It's @RaceAnnouncer is my Twitter page. You can follow us there and leave a comment. There's a new Inside Vintage Racing every Monday night. I'm Brian Bielanski. Have yourself a fantastic weekend and go play with cars.